This summer, Bridget and I are trading the familiar for the fog-laden peaks of the Carpathian Mountains as we embark on a journey through Transylvania, Romania. It is a region where the line between historical record and Gothic myth is famously blurred, and we've spent the last few months immersing ourselves in the lore of its most notorious figure, Count Dracula. Our fascination began with Bram Stoker's 1897 novel, but our research quickly pulled us into a far more complex and arguably more terrifying life of the man who inspired the myth, Vlad III, known as Vlad the Impaler. We learned that while Stoker's Count is a creature of the night, the historical Vlad was a prince of Wachia who earned his gruesome moniker by impaling tens of thousands of enemies to protect his borders. Beyond the shadow of the stake, we're eager to experience the Transylvania that exists outside the Horror-Gendra. To prepare for the trip and organize our findings, I put together a short video that captures the dual identity of Transylvania, the historical grit of a medieval warrior prince versus the supernatural allure of its most famous vampire.
This is the true story behind Count Dracula, an origin rooted in history, folklore, and fiction that transformed a brutal past into an enduring legend. For centuries, scholars and storytellers have traced Dracula's myth across Eastern Europe, where oral tales, superstitions, and local figures blended into a terrifying narrative still. This film examines four threads: ancient folklore, medieval violence, Bram Stoker's literary invention, and the modern imagination that redefined Dracula for the world today. We travel to Transylvania, to archival pages and battlefields, to court records and novels, seeking where fact ends and fiction begins, in Dracula's story itself. Throughout this journey, the narration remains measured and authoritative, with subtle atmospheric echoes in moments of reflection to match the subject's dark gravity and distance. We begin with ancient myths of the undead, stories shaped by plague, border warfare, and the living memory of violent nobles who inspired dread today. Long before the novel, Eastern European villagers feared revenants, corpses that rose to harm the living, tales shaped by burial customs, disease, and isolation. Medical ignorance and misunderstood decomposition produced sightings, bloated bodies, darkened features, displaced burial stakes interpreted as signs of undead return by frightened communities at night. Folklore offered practical precautions: staking, decapitation, and ritual burning. Such methods reflect real anxiety and a desire to control death's apparent reversal in unsettled times. Border conflicts in the Carpathians produced lawless zones where brigands, raiders, and shifting loyalties bred tales of predatory figures feeding on fear and flesh regularly. Stories mixed religious condemnation with superstition. Church records often described unholy return as sin or diabolical influence, reinforcing communal rituals against the disturbed dead elsewhere. By the 18th century, ethnographies cataloged vampire legends across villages, preserving accounts that later researchers would mine for patterns and cultural meaning in historical archives. In the 15th century, a Wallachian prince named Vlad III gained a reputation for relentless cruelty during warfare and administration. His epithet, the Impaler, comes from tactics of impalement used as public punishment and deterrence, recorded by both enemies and contemporaries in diplomatic letters account. Accounts vary dramatically. Western pamphlets sensationalized his brutality, while local chronicles emphasized defense against Ottoman expansion and internal disorder then. Vlad ruled in a fragmented political landscape, employing severe measures that left vivid impressions on European diplomats, travelers, and printed news of the era. Centuries later, translations of hostile accounts circulated in England, their lurid details forming a loose historical scaffold for later fictional embellishment that would inspire stories. It is important to separate documented acts from rumor. Scholars debate motives and scale, but agree Vlad's memory supplied vivid color to the Dracula myth. In 1897, Bram Stoker published Dracula, a novel synthesizing folklore, travel literature, and contemporary anxieties about science, sexuality, and empire into a single haunting narrative. Stoker's Count is a dramatic construct, aristocratic, predatory, and European, borrowing names and motifs, but reshaping them into a compelling antagonist for Victorian fears specifically. Research suggests Stoker drew on travel accounts of Transylvania, press stories of Vlad, and Gothic tropes more than on a single source or historical biography. The novel's letters and diary format magnified intimacy and urgency, allowing multiple perspectives that made the Count's horror both personal and scientifically curious and unsettling. Stoker also tapped late 19th century concerns, degeneration, migration, and Eastern threats, packaging them into an antagonist, could cross borders and corrupt societies quietly. The book's success established Dracula as a cultural touchstone, spawning stage adaptations, films, and scholarly debate that amplified myth beyond Stoker's original pages and interpretation. 20th century cinema transformed Dracula into a visual icon, codifying costumes, gestures, and atmosphere that persist in popular imagination worldwide today through countless adaptations since. Later portrayals varied, from romantic anti-heroes to camp figures, reflecting changing social anxieties and an appetite for reinvention across eras and cultures. In global media, academic study untangles myth from history, tracing how national memory, printing culture, and popular entertainment fused to produce the Dracula icon over centuries of storytelling. In Romania today, Vlad is both a national figure and contested memory. Tourism markets his legacy, even as historians critique simplifications for profit. Dracula endures because the story adapts. It absorbs cultural fears, technological changes, and new artistic lenses, ensuring its presence in our collective imagination and identity. Ultimately, Dracula's story survives as layered history, an intersection of myth and memory that reveals more about societies than a single historical figure over time.